So with this one, in the second violin part, you want to be very careful. Second violin is very crucial to the orchestra. Likewise, the viola is also very crucial. These two inner voices tend to add a lot of flavor, a lot of context to the music, whereas the first violin tends to just play the melody without the second violin and without the viola part. It doesn't have the same sort of substance. So when you're playing through, you want to be sure that you're always listening for the melody, because you never want to cover the melody. It's kind of like if you have music and a vocalist or a singer or a rock band, and the singer's singing in the rock band and the guitar and the drums are way too loud and you can't hear what the singer's saying, then you kind of lose the point of the music. Same thing here, we have to be very sensitive to our playing and make sure that the melody is always heard, but we're adding in our part and giving it just that extra, some people would say love, so it has that sparkle. So be very careful, always listen. That's number one. At the beginning of this piece, you have to be careful because there were mistakes in the edition, at least the one that I have here. So I wrote in F sharp on the second bar. Make sure that you change those G's down to an F sharp. It stays F sharp all the way through. And then once you move on to the third bar, it should be as written. But make sure you're aware that it is F sharp. I don't want to hear people playing G's while everyone else is playing F sharp. It doesn't sound pretty. The first bar, we have to be careful of hooks. So hooks in my terminology is also referred to as Mouret or détaché lancé. And I think détaché lancé probably would be the better of the two out of Mouret. Mouret is a little bit more connected, which we'll get to in some of the other pieces. But this one has to be more articulate. So it has to have more of a stop in between the two eighth notes. So you have to have it what's called articulate. We hear the beginning and the end of each eighth note. So here would be that détaché lancé, which is the way I want it, or eighth notes, right? So you hear the beginning of each, but still in the same bow direction. Whereas a Mouret would be something a little bit more connected. And I kind of put these all into hooks because we're hooking the eighth notes in one bow. So the Mouret is more, so it's connected more, right? Not as much of a break in the sound. So we want these to be more articulate and a little bit more clear. So do practice your hooks. You can go through any sort of scale. This is in the key of G major, so it would be appropriate to practice G major with hooks. As opposed to a Mouret style, which is smoother. So that's kind of what we're looking for with the hooks in this piece. Third bar, again, be careful of the F sharps instead of the G's. And then when you get to the main theme, it is actually a step down from dynamic. I don't know how well this recording is going to come out, but you'll hear the forte as a statement, and then when we come in with a theme, it's back down to mezzo forte. So you can hear the difference in dynamic level. Stylistically, with this piece, we want to have the bow strokes so that all the choral notes tend to have more of a martelé style. Martelé means hammer-like. So it has to have a clear beginning and end to all the choral notes. And then we want the eighth notes and half notes to be more full. So we're going to connect them in more of a détaché. Détaché means detached, but it's really referring to the bow. So the bow is separate bows, not slurred, but détaché, detached bows, but still connected, so more legato style. So all of the choral notes have that martelé style. So a little bit more weight in the first finger, give a little bit more punch to each note. And then when you get to the eighth notes, it's going to be more first finger weight consistently, and then being very fluid and relaxed with the wrist. Right? And then that last part there, I kind of goofed it the first time, but you want to make sure you're playing B, C, B, A, G, A with your fourth finger, just to make it easier. I don't want to hear a lot of string crossings when you don't have to. And then feel that G, A, G, and then open A so that you can get ready to go up to measure 5, which is going to be a B on the A string. So you have that martelé, right? And you can practice this, but this is what makes music so interesting, is these different styles and characteristics. So when we get to measure 5, we have that same hook that we worked on at the beginning, and then measure 6, this is where we get to a little bit more sophisticated styles. We have the dotted cuerno, which your teacher probably has taught you how to count it, but you have to be aware of what to do with the bow. So measure 5, we have the hook. And then measure 6, we have to save on that dotted cuerno so that we don't spend so much bow and then have to use a whole lot of bow to get back to the frog. So if we did that A, that eighth note, is really going to stick out. So we don't want it to punch out. We actually want the B to be more important and then have the A a little bit less. So in order to do that, save your bow on the B and then be extra light on the A since it's such a fast and short note. So, and you can compensate when you save your bow and not use so much by giving just a little bit more weight so you're still at the same dynamic level. And then when you get to measure 7 with the A's, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. Some teachers prefer open strings, some teachers prefer fourth fingers. I prefer something that's in tune, first and foremost. Secondly, I tend to go more with the fourth fingers. Fourth finger will tend to have a warmer timbre, tone quality than, say, an open string. Open strings tend to be very bright, whereas fourth finger is not nearly as bright, not it doesn't have that same twang to it. And then you can also vibrate and give it a little bit more warmth. So, right, and it has that better quality to it. And then when you get on to measure 5, 6, 7, 8, it's that same kind of turn that we had before with the eighth note. This time, use your fourth finger at the very end so that it keeps you on the D string for the first ending, which is going on to an F sharp. And for that F sharp, same stylistic qualities that we've been doing before, the martelé, and then also having the good hooks and the articulation. And then you go back and repeat that whole first section. So when you get to the second ending, it's the same sort of thing where you save your bow, save, so we don't hear that big up bow on the eighth note. And then notice how it says on the second ending, RIT, R-I-T period, last time. So that means ritardando, which means to gradually slow down. And then last time refers to the very last time you play this, which is after the DS. So don't start slowing down in the second ending. And then also for the fermata, we're not going to hold that fermata. That should be at the very end of the piece when we've slowed down and we're just holding. So let's count that just for 3 beats and move right along. So that takes us to the next line. Notice the bar of the fermata is only a dotted half note, and dotted half notes get 3 beats. So our time signature tells us there should be 4 beats in a bar. Why is that one only 3 beats? Well, it's given to you on the very next line. And notice how the first measure only has a quarter rest, which is 1 beat. So 3 plus 1 is 4. For whatever reason, because there's a fine, they told you, or they don't want you to think you have to do that quarter rest at the end. Or in the first violin part, they have the pickups going into the next bar, which is measure 13. So we want to make sure that we don't skip that quarter rest. So when we get to the dotted half note, you're holding 1, 2, 3. Don't jump right into 1. Make sure we feel that 4th beat as a rest. So wait for the first violins to do their pickup, and then we come in. Now, this whole section, as simple as it may look, is actually pretty tricky because we have a lot of quarter rests. These quarter rests you have to be very careful to count accurately. So we have quarter rests with quarter notes, and then we have on bar 14 a quarter rest followed by, a quarter note followed by a quarter rest and a half rest. So quarter rest with a half rest is 3 counts before you come in for the next one. So inside you should be counting and feel where that beat is. So going on after the fermata, so I'll play the bar of the fermata, which we're not going to do. You're just going to count it 3 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Right? So you go right into that next one. So if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So one way to be very accurate, and this is kind of an advanced concept, and you see a lot of professionals do it, you'll see a lot of good high school groups do it, and because you're an honor middle school group or intermediate school group, I really think you should probably work on stuff like this, but it's breathing. Anytime you feel quarter rest, you should give a good sniff or feel that beat internally. So a lot of musicians will do it by breathing. So we will feel that 4th beat. Right. Now, when you get to bar 14, you don't need to breathe on 3 beats, so it's 1. I only feel, internally, I feel 1, rest, rest, and then breathe in on 4. So you come in on 1, right? So it's going to be... Could be tricky, but that's definitely, the notes are just G, A's, and I think there's an F sharp. So 3 notes, right? Not hard. Anyways, so when you play that, you want to make sure that you're really feeling all those beats internally. Then, going on, after measure 20, make sure you retake because the pickups to 21 starts on a down bow. So you finish 20, retake, and then we're back to the 8th theme. So keep that martelé style for the quarter notes, keep those 8th notes nice and legato all the way through, and then we come out into the 3rd theme of this rondo, which starts the pickup to 29. So I'll play measure 20 for you again, all the way to 29. So that whole section there, that C section, we have to play around with dynamics. So just in general, we should be working on bow divisions. So when you have quarter notes, we're going to be using our full bow. When we have eighth notes, we're going to be using half a bow. So don't use a lot of bow on your eighth notes. Stay either at the tip, or if you're at the tip and you got a quarter note, come back to the frog. But then you have eighth notes, stay here at the frog, so that we're not hearing a lot of bow on eighth notes, those fast moving notes. And then for dynamics, for the contrast, we want to make sure that we feel fortes being full bows, but then when we get to those piano, or what I like to call echoes, we're just going to use small bows and stay at the tip. It's a very light part of the bow. And when we get 60 kids for this honor orchestra all playing at the tip, it's going to be very effective, and it's going to make such a big impact. And we'll hear this really loud forte down to this really soft piano. So make sure we're thinking of our bow usage. So this starts to pick up to 29 with this C section. So it goes. And then we're at the tip. And using whole bows for the forte sections, right? Now, finger pattern wise, we have to be very careful with the low twos. We have had low twos from the beginning. Make sure you're thinking G major, low twos on the A string, high twos on the D string, high twos on the G string as well, but low twos on the E string. I don't think we get to any low twos on the E string, but be aware how G major works. And then when you get to measure 30, 31, 32, we have that G sharp. So G sharp is probably new for a lot of us. We've been doing E, F sharp, G, where we feel that half step between the F sharp and G, and the fingers should be touching. But then we haven't really done a whole lot of G sharps. So anytime you see a G sharp, we must stretch that third finger a little bit more. So if you have your fourth finger tape or pitch indicator, make sure you feel that fourth finger go on the tape or where it should be, but then that third finger should fall right underneath, and we feel that G sharp on the high side going to that A. So G sharps, when you see them, those high threes, make sure we're stretching them. And it's particularly tough here because the bar before we're doing a lot of low twos. And then we have to really stretch. So I would practice just playing that much. Sorry. And then setting and checking. Stop and check. That's a valuable tool. Make sure you always check your fingers. Anytime I have stretches, I usually mark an X. X means to stretch, extend. So stretch those fingers. Extend. And then we have that dotted quarter note again. So make sure you save, right? Measure 35. Now, those echoes and fortes tend to always start on the second beat of the measure, which is kind of Mouret's way of trying to trick the audience, because generally speaking, the downbeats are usually where things happen. So we're used to hearing it, and then it's kind of like somebody pulls a chair out from underneath you and you fall down. So we want to make sure that we feel that hit on the downbeat, but then nothing immediately after. And then full bows on the second beat when it becomes forte, and it's like, wake up, right? So be careful about those kinds of things. We come to the end here, 40. The same thing, we have those two dotted half or dotted quarter note eighth notes on measure 41, 2, 3. Measure 43. Right, and then measure 44, I'm writing in, and it might be in your part already, but we want to make sure we come down to a piano so that we make that change to fortissimo more effective, getting into measure 46. So once we do that, then we're pretty much home free, because we're going back to the DS, back to the sign. And when you go back to the sign, you never take the repeat, so you just take the second ending. So we come to measure 45. So be sure, the fermata means to hold, and the only way you're going to know to release is you're going to have to watch the conductor, which hopefully will be me. So just watch and wait for the cue, and I'll release you. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free, go onto Google Classroom. This is going to be a way for you to engage me. You can submit your own videos if you have questions, or you want me to listen to what you're playing. By all means, go ahead and submit it. I might not get to it right away, so but eventually we still have a few more months really, to get all this stuff done. Ask your teacher, have your teacher give you some advice. Just don't be afraid to ask. I want you to be as prepared as you can for this videotaped audition, and then keep practicing.